Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second lecture of Introduction to Research, the dissertation seminar for the MA program. I'll be doing this screencast to kind of get us used to, well, not used to, sorry. I'm doing the screencast because I can't lecture to you in person, and we can't meet in person right now due to the campus closure. But hopefully we can just kind of keep things going. I'm going to try to keep this as short as I can because I know that long videos can be a bit boring. But if you feel like I rush through anything, just leave a comment, or post something in the forum so that I can get back to you. The more that you interact, then the more teaching I can do and the more I can help you. I know it's really tough, but let's just try to do our best because we are going to stick with the growth mindset. Remember? Okay, so right now, perhaps you're in a comfort zone. I know I'm in a comfort zone where I feel safe and in control if I don't leave the house and I don't need to go online and do my Moodle work or whatever, okay? And that could be because I'm afraid, right? Like the fear zone, and I find excuses like it's too hard or something like that. But let's try to get into the learning zone. So that's what I'm trying to do today. So acquire new skills like how to be a lecturer online, which is really difficult. Deal with challenges, right? Like how do I reach my students who are maybe at home and I can't see them in person and I can't do any consultations. But hopefully we can get to this kind of growth zone where we conquer our objectives, and many of you, or all of you, okay, all of you still do a really good job on your dissertations, which is what really matters to me, okay? So let's aim for that. I know it's hard, but let's just keep trying our best, okay? All right, so let's look at our schedule. All right, so admin-wise, scheduling. Okay, so first thing is let's look at our schedule. So today we were supposed to have Professor Gina Marchetti come in to talk about film and literature. But what we've decided with all of the guest lecturers is that we're going to have them all come in later on in the semester when classes have resumed. Because really our main goal is to have you meet your potential advisors and talk with them about your work, not only to have them teach you as well. So when it comes to things like intertextuality or adaptation, film and literature, you should have already learned a lot about this in your other courses, but I will try to do some review for you as well. Just like I said before, post anything in the forum if you have any questions or whatever, okay? So let's see. That also includes Dr. Daniel Elam's guest lecture, and also our workshop on topics in the library. So as we go on, and once things get clearer, then I'll post an updated schedule. But for now, just kind of know that everything is postponed and we're going to do things online. Okay, now back to the PowerPoint. Second, your assignments. So I still want you to do your assignments. This is really important because maybe in your other classes, people are like kind of slacking a bit and like, oh, we don't know what's going to happen. But for you, you still have a hard deadline, okay? You still have a hard deadline of your dissertation, right, is going to be due August 1st, okay? There's no changing that. You still need to write it. And most of the work for that needs to get done now and throughout the next few months, okay? So maybe take this as an opportunity to start working on it. So stay on track, okay? That's the key thing, right? So for today, I asked that you submit, and I sent an email, I asked that you submit your initial topics and research questions worksheet, as you can see right here. Okay, so you can download it here. I passed it out as a handout when we first met, but you can download it here. I want you to fill it out as a Word file, .doc or .docx, and then I want you to fill it out and then submit it on Turnitin. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it in detail. I'm going to try to give you kind of detailed feedback to really help you. Okay, so if you don't do this, then that hurts you. All right, so really get this done. Okay, all right, so I expect to have those in by tonight. And then I'll try to get feedback to you as soon as I can. All right, and then what we're going to do after that is we're also going to work on literature review. So right now you should still be studying, you should still be researching and writing up work on your literature review, because I still want you to present some form of your literature review to your classmates. Now that might not be in person, most likely not, but it could be in some form like a written form or something like that. Okay, so we'll get into that later. Okay, back to schedule. All right. So today's topic then is refining your research topic. Okay, so this is kind of an overall kind of general lecture about how your dissertation should be going and the research you're doing. So the key here is I want you to think about writing as you go. Okay. And what I mean by writing as you go is as you're studying and you're researching, you're not just reading and absorbing. You're also kind of processing that information as you bring it in and kind of putting it back out in some sort of written form, not just for your memory, but also for eventually maybe to go into your dissertation or at least notes for your dissertation. Okay, so as you're writing, then I want you to be thinking of yourself as a role player, like a performer or an actor of some sort. Now, what is the role that you're playing? Okay, so here we have, and this is from the Booth reading. Okay, so just let me go back to this again real fast. Okay, so I really want you to read this. It can really help you a lot. So, The Craft of Research by Booth and other authors. Okay, this will really help you. All the work that I'm kind of trying to process for you and explain to you comes from this. Okay, as well as the Whisker. So really, for this course, I really want you to focus on reading both of these. It'll really help you with your dissertation. Okay. So from Booth says, as a researcher, you have to adopt the role of someone who knows what others need to know, and to cast your reader as someone who doesn't know but needs to. Okay, so this is really important, a real important distinction to make. Many of you as undergraduate students or as master's students have been writing papers where you think of it as a test. And you're writing in a way that you hope that your teacher reads the essay or the assignment and says, okay, that's correct or incorrect. And they agree with you. So you're writing as if the person who's reading it is more knowledgeable than you are. Now, as a researcher, you're flipping your role. Now you are writing to an audience that knows less than you do. So what that means is you need to become the teacher as you're writing. You need to play the role as someone who is more knowledgeable, who understands the question. Now, that also makes it harder because as you write, you need to write in a way that's not only authoritative in tone, but also is substantive in the way that it presents that information. Meaning that you need to cite sources, you need to explain why things are significant, and you need to explain how everything relates back to the research topic and answers the research question. Okay, so remember, now that you are writing for your master's in literary and cultural studies, you're trying to write something that your reader maybe is interested in but knows less about than you, and you are going to explain it to them and explain how it answers whatever kind of research question they're seeking to answer. Ideally, when your dissertation goes into the library, there will be people all over the world, whether it's on the internet or something like that, who want to understand this topic better. And they look to your research to understand it better. So when you write, you need to be writing for that audience. Okay. Secondly, I will post this as a PDF, okay, so that you can kind of use it. I will post these PowerPoint slides as a PDF so that you can use it for your own needs. Okay. But why do you write as you go? Well, one is when you're writing, okay, one is obviously you don't want to forget, okay? So obviously the most important thing to write is the quotations that you're going to cite in your dissertation or the kind of examples that you need. So if there's a quotation or something that you think is really important, maybe like, I don't know, I'll give you an example, okay? So let's say we are reading in Booth, okay? So I'm going to open up the Booth reading. Okay. Sorry, maybe I should be a bit more prepared than this, but I apologize for that. Okay, readings, Booth. Okay, so I'm reading, imagine that this is not a reference on how to research, but some sort of actual, scholarly source that you're reading, okay? So I think like, okay, let's go to Why Write It Up. Okay, that's what we're working on right now. Okay, Why Write It Up, page 12. Okay, so let's say I'm on, why is it that I need to write it up? Thinking imprint, okay. What is research? So I'm reading, right? One is you write to remember, okay? But one of the things that I'm going to find something that I think is really important. So let's see. What you don't write down, you are likely to forget or worse to misremember. That's why careful researchers don't wait until they've gathered all their data to start writing. They write from the beginning of the project so they can then hold as much of it in their minds as clear as they can. Okay, so I think that this is really important. They can hold as much of it in their minds as clearly as they can. So how do I emphasize that? So let's say, for example, I'm taking notes. So I copy paste that. I copy paste that. Okay, good. So that's a quotation that I may use, right? So it's Booth, page 12. Okay, and then I'm going to write some sort of summary. That kind of explains what I'm thinking, or how I react to that. So I'm writing as I go because I want to remember what I found significant about this, quotation. For this quotation, what matters most is holding it in my mind clearly. So it's not just that I remember, but also that I remember what makes this quotation or evidence useful. So another thing too is, as you're writing, you're also practicing writing. That's really important. So when you're writing, you're using a different kind of voice. Obviously, I think you should use active voice when you're writing. Okay, so just remember. Another thing you can say is, this quotation could be useful for when and for example, I could say when I'm teaching my students about research. For you, it could be for when I'm writing about the importance of literary themes or something like that. Okay, or in application to understanding this particular text, etc. Okay, so you want to write as you go. You want to, summarize, and eventually, what will happen is this section that you use here could be a paragraph that you eventually ends up in your dissertation or something like that. Okay, and you want to create a sort of system for recording what you write. You may do it in like a Word document. Some people like to use Evernote. I don't know if you have Evernote, but here's an example of Evernote, right? When I was an MA student, I would use Evernote. So let's say, for example, I create a new note. Okay, so I would say notes on Booth, or something like that. It's up to you. Okay, and then I would just write this up in here. Okay, and then oops, I don't know what just happened there. That's okay. That's not important. Okay, and then I would just save it. And you could file it under different types of notes. Okay, and you can add tags or whatever. So Evernote is a free software, but you can also use what I'm using now. But it's basically a note card system. Okay, so before the internet, before computers, people wrote everything on these little note cards and they filed it together. This is just an automatic filing system. Now I actually use a program called Trello. So for example, I have like a writing workflow. So depending on different topics. So let's say I'm working on let's see, I guess this would be the best example. So I'm working on my book project, which is similar to dissertation, right? So I have notes for my table of contents, notes for my introduction, notes for different things, right? So let's say, for example, I'm working on my literature review, right? So, my literature review, I would be like, oh, what particular topic that I'm working on. So this could be something like, writing up. This is just for example, and it would be Booth. And then I might make a card, I might put the MLA citation. Okay, you can also use EndNote, which is what we're supposed to learn at the library, but it's okay if you don't. So, for example, then I usually just use the library website to get my MLA, to get my MLA citation. It's pretty fast, pretty easy. But you can also write it up by hand. Writing it up by hand is actually a good idea. Just because it will, it's just good practice, I would say. That's just the best way to put it. Okay, so if you want to get the citation, it's very easy to get the citation from the website too. So it's like, okay, what do you want? You want Chicago? You want MLA? So I use MLA, and then I would just paste it into Trello. Sorry, where's Trello? Right. Trello is also free software. Okay. So I save that, and then I would be like, okay, the comment that I want to use is, the quotation that I think is important is this one, right? So I copy it, and I put it into Trello. I put the page 13, okay? And, let's see, and then I write, important for understanding why to write as I go. Could be used in section 1, applicable to teaching. Right? So let's say that this particular part gets really detailed. I can create a new card. So then I would just like, sorry. There are ways to create cards or whatever. But anyway, so you can do this, or you can make a brand new card if it gets longer. Sometimes I'll have entire lists that are just kind of like my notes on one particular book or one particular topic, etc. Anyway, you get the idea. Trello, that's free software too. But the point is to write. Write as you go. Okay? So later on, as you're going through this PowerPoint, maybe you can write down the reasons to write as you go. Right? Obviously, it's in the booth as well, right? Write to remember, write to understand. Okay, this is key too. All right, write to understand. A lot of times when you are copying down quotations, you might be copying because, and this is true of me, I copy it because I think that it's important, but I don't know why. So what I do is I'll write it down, and then after I write it down, then I'll reread it a few more times, and I'll be like, okay, this is important, and I understand that it means this or this and this. It's only after writing about it that I really begin to understand what it means. Okay, what else? To gain perspective. All right, so this goes back to the idea of role playing. Remember that the type of persona that you use to write changes the way that you approach and analyze what you're saying. If you analyze it from this perspective of I'm a professional researcher, I am a teacher, then you will kind of come at it with a different type of perspective. So I want you to write with that persona, to use that perspective, in order to write. In short, you should write so that you remember more accurately, understand, and see what you think more clearly. And you discover the better you write, the more critically you will read. This is important too. I think that the more you write, the better reader you will become. And I think many of you, right now, you're reading these texts for the first time, and you're taking notes, and then you're going to read it again later on when you're writing your dissertation for whatever reason. Like, oh, I didn't really understand that passage well enough, or I need to go back to it. You'll actually understand it better later because you did all the work on trying to understand it or trying to write up about it now. Okay, and this will also be true not just later on when you're writing your dissertation, but later when you're doing your MPhil or your PhD, or when you are a professor or an instructor or lecturer. So even now, I read different texts that I read maybe when I was younger or before, and I understand a lot better because I have been writing and I understand it. Okay, all right. Cool. Right as go. So what are your data? So data, singular, datum. Okay, a lot of people don't know that, but data is actually plural. But your data depends on, data just means evidence, right? So what is the evidence that you're using? So there are two types of research that you'll be doing for your dissertation. The first type of research is the scholarship, so the literature review. That is a form of research, and in the humanities, it's very important to do this so that you understand. And I'll do a whole lecture on literature review. Secondly, your data then is the kind of work the stuff that you're analyzing. For historians, their data is like the archive, so historical documents, texts, that kind of thing, right? So for you then, your data is going to be what exactly you're studying, which is literature, culture, film studies, this kind of stuff. So your data then is your text. Okay, so that could be a novel, that could be it could be a film or films, it could be speeches, it could be videos or moving images of texts, like it could be things like videos of people attending rallies. There's many different types of texts and many types of data that you can use. Okay, but it's important to understand that this is really what you're analyzing. Okay, so you are preparing yourself to be someone who can analyze literary and cultural work, right? So you are not a historian. I mean, you do need history, Okay, you use history, but you are not analyzing or writing history or saying what historically happened. Okay, so that's not your data. Your data is the actual texts themselves that may reveal something about history. Okay, or they may reveal something about culture, or they may reveal something about society. But your text is not society itself. Your text is not culture itself, whatever culture is. Okay, your text is actual products of culture, such as a book, such as a novel, such as a play. Okay, so that means that then and also, sorry, this is important too, is your data is not the scholarship that you're reading. Okay, it's not the theory. Your data is not what Foucault said about the history of sexuality. Your data is, a text that you're analyzing, but you could be using the methodologies that you learn from theorists like Foucault or Judith Butler or whatever. Okay, so it's important to understand your data. So that means then that the major aim of your dissertation is to present data and analyze it and explain your findings about that data to your readers. Okay? All right, so now let's move on to what's your itch? Okay, so your itch is kind of like something that needs to be scratched. It's a need, right? Kind of almost a primal desire. Okay, it's like, oh, something's itchy, I need to scratch it. So research is sort of like an itch. I have something that I need to understand. I really want to solve it. Like it itches at me, it scratches at me, or I need to scratch it. Okay, so everyone has a different itch when it comes to research, but it's something that you really want to know, you really want to understand, you really want to solve. Think of it as like an investigation. You're a detective. You are trying to. There's an itch. There's a problem that you can't solve. You want to understand it. Okay, and it's important that you write this down. Okay, so I wrote this. I created this as a PowerPoint. Where you could write the kind of your answers to these questions. So what's your itch? For me, when I first started as a researcher, my itch was to understand a question like, what is Asian cinema? How can cinema be Asian, right? Like, is Asia an ethnicity? In America, it's an ethnicity, but in other places, it's a continent. Do people in Asia even call themselves Asians, right? They don't think of themselves that way. They think of themselves as Hong Kongers, or think of themselves as Chinese, or as Japanese, or religious, as Catholic, or something like that, right? There's this term Asian doesn't really make sense. And yet we used it in terms of Asian cinema. So that was my sort of research question when I started the MA program. Can you define something like Asian cinema? And that sort of led me down my research route. So what's your itch? What is it that really you want to understand? For some of you, maybe it might be something like, what does it mean to be a Hong Konger? Is that even something that you can really understand? Is there a unique identity? Or it could be something, very, very, very different from that. Like, what does it mean to be I don't know. How does a video game change the way we understand storytelling? Okay, and it could be quite general. Okay, it could be something is there any difference between storytelling in a video game versus storytelling in a movie? It could be something very, very specific, okay? But you need to identify what's that itch, what's driving you, what pushes you to that you really want to understand. And it could be something, very self-reflective or philosophical, like what's the meaning of life, or why do stories make me feel a certain way, or why are certain stories important, or why is it that I don't know, okay? Now, this itch is not necessarily going to be your ultimate research question, but it's one that you're using to motivate you to understand, okay? Now, once you understand your itch is not necessarily what your research is going to be particularly about, per se, but it will be what drives you, okay? So, when it comes to your dissertation, then, you need to pose and solve a problem others think is worth solving, right? So, let's say your itch is like, I want to know if the world is flat or not. Like, I mean, it's just not really a worthwhile research question. Not one that others think is worth solving, okay? And remember, you need to pose and solve a problem, Okay, it's not about like giving answers. Your goal is not to be like, I want to tell people what's really up, what is really up with things. You know, a lot of people, they do research and like, oh, my goal is to show everyone how racist the world is. You know, like that's not, that could be it could be a worthy goal, but maybe you should go into politics. Okay, research is about presenting problems and answering a sort of solution. So if you want to rethink that, it could be like, well, one of the problem is that, you know, why is it that even though we have a lot of understanding about, you know, racism, why is it that racism is still a problem? Why is it that race still affects something like pay gap? Why is it that race is still something that influences education? Then you have a problem that you can try to address and try to solve. Okay? So always you should start with what interests you most deeply. You know, what are your 3 interests that you like to explore? You know, so like, you know, it could be like, oh, I'm really interested in video games about Hong Kong, right? Or I'm really interested in, I don't know, no dance performance remixes, okay? Or it could, and wait, no is not even a dance, but anyway, whatever, okay? Or it could be something like, you know, I don't know, what are you talking about? I don't know, small screen, I don't know. Oh, I know. Small screen storytelling. So like Instagram stories or TikTok. This kind of thing. Okay, this could be kind of interests that you'd like to explore. All right. You know, you should be already pretty far down on this. Okay. Next, turn your general interest into a focused topic. This is key. All right. So it's not enough to say this like, oh, you know, I really love Shakespeare. I really love, you know, I really love Virginia Woolf. Okay, it's not enough to say that. It needs to be something very, very focused. Right? You need to turn that general interest into something and winnow it down. Okay, I want you to think of it as like a. Oh, I'm gonna draw something here. Okay, I don't know if this is a good idea. Maybe this is. Let's just try something. Okay, yeah. Okay, let's use these. Recently used shapes. I don't know if this is a good idea. Okay. All right. You want to think of it as like you have like a wide focus, okay? And you want it to get. So this is why it's so much better to lecture in class, right? So you want it to grow more and more focused, okay? So you want it to get smaller. Okay, more direct. Okay, smaller until, and not just smaller, but kind of like more kind of forceful too. I don't know how to say that, but it's like not only are you becoming less broad, less wide, but you're growing smaller, but you're also getting more directional. So eventually, you know, it's like, it looks like, you know, your work, your ideas are becoming more kind of more, almost even more like an arrow. Okay. And I'll show, we'll kind of talk more about that later. But the idea is to kind of winnow your research topic. So how do you do that, right? Like that means you actually have to do work cutting things out. You know, you have to like, okay, well, this is not really applicable, right? So you need to cut parts of it off. Okay. I don't know what. So much easier on a whiteboard. Okay, but you're just like cutting parts of this out, cutting parts of this out, cutting parts of it out until you have really the topic that's really focused. Okay, all right, that was a poor experiment. Okay, so here's something that Booth says: is if the writer asks no question worth pondering, he can or she, okay, or they, okay, can offer no focused answer worth reading. So answer questions that are worth answering. All right, so. You know, like when someone says it's like, oh, you know, I want to, you know, look at representations of, you know, babies in, you know, graphic novels. Like, what's the question? You're just kind of presenting information. You really want to ask a question. You know, it could be something like, why are babies so prevalent in graphic novels? And even then, is that really worth answering? Is it what is the significance of babies in graphic novels? It could be even more focused than that. Okay, it could be, you're looking for something that's really, really focused, something that answers something that's significant, okay, that matters in a certain way, okay? All right. So another thing to think about then is not just focusing your question, right? So it's like taking a circle, making it, okay, maybe this will help illustrate, okay? Taking a circle, right? Big circle. So it's not just about refining your research question by shaping it, right? So it's like take a circle, make it smaller, make it more focused, but also kind of more kind of your research question is more, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? More directed, okay? More directed in a certain way, more, smaller focus, more directed. So that's not the only thing you're doing, right? Another thing you want to do is you want to understand the relationships between your research question and your topic to other things, okay? This is important because, okay, let's see if we can do this. I keep saying that this is such a bad thing, but then it's like I keep doing it. But anyway, okay. Let me make the line smaller. Okay, so it's not just that you are, right, like I said, useless. Okay, whatever. It's not just about refining your research question, but also finding the ways that your research question is related to others. Okay, so what are the relationships between one research question and another? Do they intermix? Do they overlap in certain ways? Okay, and what's special about the ways that they overlap? Right. So these overlapping regions, right? So let's say like you're looking at an overlap here where it's related to this topic and related to this one. This is the place that's most fertile. It's the most it's the ground where you're going to find really interesting stuff. Where your findings have the most relevance to other topics. Okay. So when you're looking again at your topics, you need to think about how do they relate to one another. And I don't want you to just kind of come up with some sort of quick answer. It's like, there are many video games and there are video games about Hong Kong, right? So Hong Kong and video games relate to another. No, I want you to think even more specific. That's why I want you to write. It could be something really fascinating. Like for me, when I thought about video games in Hong Kong, it was like, Hong Kong, has a strong history of cinema, and video games are related to cinema. So then it's like related in what way? So for me, it's video games are cinematic. They borrow, action, perspective, shots, themes. So not just narrative, right? And then, so how can a video game be specifically Hong Kong-ish? And for me, that connection was made through cinema. Okay, now that's my way of approaching it, but you can think about it in other ways. So it's very important to understand the relationships between these topics. These relations are going to be the places where you find the most interesting or important or valuable kind of ways of thinking about your research. Secondly, so then how is your topic part of a larger system? Okay, so it's not just that your topic is part of this little thing, right? It's also there's also some much bigger context that your topic is part of. It could be something like that. So your topic might be something that's important in thinking about something bigger. Okay, so what is your topic part of a larger system? Okay, so let's go back to the Hong Kong video games, right? So it's part of this understanding of Hong Kong studies, right? It's also part of an important study of new media studies. Okay, it's also important to understand narrative, and moving and screen studies. Okay, so it's important to understand how it's part of a larger system because there's lots of important questions that are part of these larger fields that can help you think about your topic. So what's important in understanding Hong Kong studies, right? It's like, post 97. What are the important questions people think about here? Post 1997, or the umbrella movement or the anti-extradition protests, or issues like nativism, xenophobia, or other issues like language, like Cantonese, other issues like cosmopolitanism. These issues that are part of that larger system could add to or help you refine your research question. So what are the important things about new media studies? It's like different from cinema, different from text, and then focus on the medium itself. When it comes to narrative, it could be things like, those of you who have taken my intro to art and politics or my art and politics of narrative course, you might understand it's like, structure, genre, but also allegory, and then when it comes to screen studies, there's all these other kind of questions, right? So understanding how your topic is part of a larger system will help you refine the kind of research question and the type of the utility of these questions. Not only that, it also helps you understand. It also helps you understand how that topic can add to our understanding of that larger system. So there might be something about a study of Hong Kong video games that will help us understand Hong Kong or will help us understand video games. Both of these are very useful. Okay, and so that's how you want to present your research, as something that's useful. Okay, so how and why has your topic changed through time as something with its own history? So this, you'll have to do your literature review. Okay, you need to understand what your topic has to do, not only with your own personal history, like how did you come to this research topic? So it's kind of a cliche, but everyone's preface of their book is always some story about how they came to do their research. I was studying in Hong Kong and I saw this video game and I thought, oh, wow, I played this video game. And, I also go to a place that looks like a place in this video game. That really got me sucked into this kind of research question. That's something about how your topic has changed through time and with its own history. Writing this up can be very useful for you. Okay, but also it's important to think about this topic within a larger history of, so how and why is your topic an episode in a larger history? And that larger history is one of the academic study of that topic. You're not the first person, and I'm not the first person to study this. Newton was not the first person to study physics, right? But he was standing on the shoulder of giants. And Einstein is not the first person to study particles, but it's all part of a larger history. And knowing that history will guide you in refining your research question. All right. Lastly, what kind of thing is your topic? What are the different ways that it varies? Okay. How are instances of it similar and different to one another? These can be very useful. My topic might be something that how do I put this? I think it helps to kind of categorize your topic. Okay, so maybe we should skip to that. To what larger categories can it be? Is your topic part of, and this goes back to is it part of an understanding of media? Is it part of understanding of society, or society under a different form of globalization or a different form of capitalism, or is it part of a topic or category that has to do with trends in linguistic studies or translation studies? And this is the key. How does that help us understand it? So I'm putting these questions to you, and I want you to answer them. And I want you to answer them by writing. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'll post this PowerPoint so you can actually write in here, and then you can use it as your notes. This will really help you understand your research question. Okay. Lastly, what's the value of your topic? How is it useful? Useful to who? For what? And in what type of debates does it go into, right? So, for example, let's say my topic is something, very politicized, like, what is Asian cinema? Well, to say that there's something different about Asian cinema versus Western cinema is actually something that's quite political. It's loaded with a lot of values. A value judgment about what it means to be Asian, what it means to be Western, and that there are differences between these kind of, with using this false dichotomy, and then what is it useful for? So this is a really important issue, okay? This is really helpful, right? So this is something that comes from the booth reading as well, but I want you to think about it like this, is what's the relationship between your practical research problem and the research problem itself? So a practical problem could be something like, Americans don't think that Asian Americans are American, okay, because they are racially different. So my practical problem is I deal with racism as an American or something like that, okay? So that motivates my research question. My research question might be something like, why is it that even in movies, what is it about movies that makes them labeled one way versus another? So that comes to define my research problem. My research problem might be something like, what exactly is an Asian movie? Or how can we understand or define an Asian cinema? Or is there such thing as Asian cinema? And then by approaching my research problem in this way, I might find a research answer, which is something like, no, there's no such thing as Asian cinema, at least not in an objective way, okay? Or not in a way that actually is useful for or applies to the ways that the term Asian cinema is used. And that might help to solve this practical problem. Like, these racial categories or identifiers are not real, that they're socially constructed in one way or another. Okay. So your research problem should not be motivated by palpable unhappiness, okay? Your practical problem is really probably what makes you unhappy. I know that many people, they started out in research because it's like, this book or these movies really make me feel better about myself. They help me understand myself better, or they help me on this road of self-discovery. That's a practical problem. It probably is what drives you. Many people, they research and they eventually lead to questions about, the meaning of life or something like that. That's a practical problem, okay? But that should motivate your research question and come to define your research problem. So your research problem and your research answer, this section right here, this is what your dissertation deals with. This part is what you need to figure out on your own and you need to write about as well. This is a lot of work that you do on your own that will help you get to complete this circle, okay? So it's not motivated by unhappiness, but by incomplete knowledge or flawed understanding. You solve it not by changing the world, but by understanding it better. So that's the thing too. It's like, as a researcher, your goal, you may have an ultimate kind of worthy goal of wanting to solve problems like social inequity. Okay, but as a researcher, you're going to address that by understanding the world and its problems better. Okay. So this is an example of research argumentation. So you have a topic, right? I'm studying the differences among various 19th century versions of the story of the Alamo. Okay, so I'm going to change this word to Alamo because I know many of you don't know what the Alamo is, okay? But the story of the sacking or the burning of the Summer Palace. Is that 19th century? Or is it early 20th? Yeah, 19th century. Okay. I'm studying the differences among various 19th century versions of the story of the burning of the Summer Palace in Beijing. Why? Because I want to find out how politicians use stories of great events to shape public opinion. Okay, so that's an interesting research question. So then what's your conceptual significance? In order to help readers understand how politicians use elements of popular culture, right? Popular culture is your text to advance their political goals. This is what you want to understand. Okay, and this is what you're going to do. You're going to help readers understand how popular culture, which is your text, get used to advance political goals. Okay, so then what's your practical application, right? Readers can better protect themselves from unscrupulous politicians. So it's like when someone says, the sacking of the burning of the Summer Palace is an example of the victimization of, China or something like that. Then you can say it's like, but we can understand that politicians and discourse use these examples from popular culture to help us to motivate their politics. Okay. Now, this potential practical application is for you, and possibly something you write about in your conclusion. Okay, but when you're writing up your dissertation, you're focusing on the topic, the question, and its conceptual significance. So for you, I also want you to be able to do this, okay? So actually, I'm going to assign this, okay? You need to write this out, Okay, I am studying X because I want to find out Y. And the contextual significance in order to help readers understand and so that readers can do something. Okay, you need to be able to write this out. Okay, that's when you know you have a good research question. Okay, so let's say you're still kind of stuck and you don't really, well, you've already started on your research topic. The next question is, how do you find a good research problem? So this is going to be the topic of our next lecture. And our next lecture is going to be on your literature review. Okay, so your research problem isn't going to be, it's not so much that you don't have a research problem, you don't have a good one. Okay, a good research problem can only be elucidated through a strong literature review. Okay, so I hope that this helped you understand the kind of topics, how to refine your research topic, okay, how to do your research argumentation. And I want you to be able to, I want you to go through this PowerPoint and answer all these questions. And I don't want you to answer them in your head. I want you to actually write out the answers. And I want you to use this as a sort of reference that you can go back to over and over again. Okay? And then lastly, what I'd really like from you, so I would like you to copy paste this, okay, and write out these answers. I am studying something because I want to find out something in order to help the reader understand something so that readers can something. Okay, so I want you to copy paste this slide, and I want you to submit it to me. You can email it to me, or you know what you can do that's even better is you can put it into your writing feedback form. Sorry, your writing feedback form. Okay, so your feedback form, you remember, it looks like this. Initial topics and research questions. So Dr. Winnie E wrote these up, and we're using them this semester. So after you fill all this part out, you can just add another line, okay, and copy paste this part of the PowerPoint. I don't know why that got copied instead of this. Copy. Paste. Okay, and then I want you to write the answers here. Okay, so then just submit all that together. Okay. All right, so you have your lecture, you have your homework. Now you know what to do, okay? Let me know if you need more time. You can just add into the forums, okay? I'll put a little forum, dedicated to this particular lecture that you can put any questions. It's important that you post your questions as a group, for the group to read so that I don't have to answer questions multiple times. So post your questions in the forum. That way others can also benefit from answering your questions. All right, so that's it for now. Stay safe, stay healthy, and wash your hands. And I will see you in a few weeks. Okay, all right, that's it.